Our next speaker is Mr. Mohammad Kasaizadeh. He has been a journalist for the past 25 years. He is one of the founders of the Journalist Trade Union in Iran. He is a researcher, and he was also a university professor in the past. I would like to invite him to start his speech about human rights and freedom of expression in Iran. I'm very happy that we are talking about Iran, and I'm very sorry that because we are talking about freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and freedom of association, we are obliged to speak about the limitation, the prohibition, and the everyday siege that exists in our homeland. A siege that affects all aspects, political, financial, and social. In this governing minority in Iran, in order to have an absolute siege and in order to deprive people from the right to govern, abuses and takes the name of religion and uses it as a strategy. And therefore, instead of using the fundamental principles of democracy, the origin of power that is actually given to people, is taken away from them. And elections is not free, as you know, and the whole society, without having any right to their own destiny, they talk about this regime as a sacred one. Any criticism to this regime is taken as being against God in order to give them the right to oppress people. In current situation, independent parties and organizations, NGO, trade unions, and basically any gathering that allows people to get together and play an active role in practicing the right to govern are deprived and not allowed to do their activity, and the media as being the mean tool that reflects the voices of people, and the responsible for the freedom of expression is under the blade of censorship. And the only way to stop people from doing this is done by oppressing the main actors of these groups. Now, the authorities, in order to stabilize this situation, they draw red deadlines and sacralize the position of the supreme leader of Iran and create a space which is beyond the legal order. And by considering him, the supreme leader, exempt from any kind of error, increase day by day the taboo of entering the governing authority as being a private place, and limits the power to a centralized minority group. Now, this group has always aimed to not only take away the possibility of criticism from those who look for a democratic change, but also by creating labels such as Velayat Mutlaq, which is the absolute guardianship, which is understood as limiting the will of people and their destiny to be decided by him who is the Wali. Now, this patio or this place, which has been designed for this figure, allows him to be the only authority to decide on people's destiny. However, the appearance of two facts, on one hand the purity and the sacredness of the regime, and on the other hand the bad management and the extensive corruption, be it financial or political, among the minority who are the main actors within the government in Iran, has caused the legitimacy of the regime to tremble. And in order to remain on power, they are standing against people with their power. And so we can see another characteristic of this illness. It shows itself in the Iranian government, internationally or domestically, is the dissolvement of the political associations and the parties, NGOs, to such an extent that it's not only possible for the opposition groups to have their legal activities. these are institutions and assemblies from political parties and human rights organizations, social institutions and environmental organizations, literal and cultural gatherings. The Iranian regime fears the gathering of any institution that can have some social impact or power, or can have the potential for that, and worries that they can lose the power that they have when it comes to the creation of a free framework for the people of Iran, be it political or social. Iran, unfortunately, is very behind. Even in the case of the elections, the candidates pass through some filters that are created by the government. So they make sure that their power is protected from any possible diverse or different thought or ideology, and the majority are elected by the instruments who can only work and allow for whatever is within the framework of the government. Fortunately, we have the network of the social media that actually helps to spread the voice and to talk about these other different ways of looking at things, and to create a place or a space for people to talk about their views or to criticize the government. If these people are not, they decide not to cooperate with the government, then they know to what they are exposed to. We have these. The change that will actually take place in society will come from these kind of networks, and from any kind of space that is given for people to voice their criticism, or as you know, many of the websites are filtered, and many of the media or the newspaper were banned. As you know, that the journalists in Iran are under severe pressure. The firmness of the journalists and the bloggers in Iran shows that Iran is one of the biggest prisons for journalists in the country. The writers and the journalists in Iran work under terrible situation in the country. And the government has stopped all the independent newspapers, have arrested the journalists, and have created a suffocating atmosphere for the journalist, and have taken away people's hope in seeing any kind of change. The government of Iran is not willing to talk or to hear any criticism towards its doings. They do not relate at all their actions to the desire and the will of the people. What they want to do, they want to have a society that is completely deprived of any kind of power to change. And power is concentrated in the supreme leader and a small minority that actually works with them. And the journalists who are critical to the government are either in prison or were obliged to leave the country. Obviously, the violation of human rights is not only related to the journalist. The other kind of social activism are also in the same situation. Any kind of basically publicizing these activities are considered as security issues. For example, a journalist brought up a big corruption case, and it had to do with the top 20 government officials who were basically part of a big corruption case from the previous government, and he was under severe pressure, and this person now is waiting to be sentenced. And so many people realize now that they cannot bring up these issues because the government will oppress the journalists who want to work in this way. And so what they do, they try to use all the different terms like human rights. They say the law says so. They say this is justice. This is according to the constitution of our country. This is legal. And in this way, they use this kind of discourse to show the people, to use it as a garment and to show the society that what they do is completely legal, is completely correct. They actually take away the meaning of these terms and the meaning of these words and imbue it with a new meaning in order to make society compel and accept it. And they do that with the trade unions also. For example, the banning the assemblies and the right to gather and to assembly, the right of the trade unions to have their activity. The same strategy is being used. What they do is that their main aim is to make sure that the aims and the objective of the small minority that is in power, their interests are being taken care of and they are being respected. When we talk about media and we talk about freedom of expression, the situation is terrible. For example, we've had more than 150 radio and television, local television, satellite and local. None of them, not even one of them, criticizes the government or is not allowed to voice any criticism about the government. They receive from main or the official government media the news, and they are obliged to basically reflect the news as it comes from this source. At the same time, the government of Iran, they talk about they work with the Iranian. They have campaigns against Persian-speaking media that is operating and working outside of the country. They see them as threatening. The government is worried about the news that are spread through these sources and how people in the country will hear the news in their language from within the country. Many of the families of the workers of these media sources are under pressure. They were threatened. And right now we have 23 journalists who are in prison. The independent journalists in Iran are deprived of their basic rights. They are deprived of their legal freedom from the country and outside the country. For example, the trade union for the journalists in Iran are banned from continuing their work to do activities related to freedom of expression. And I would like to share with you one more point, is the government. What we have right now with the social network, many of these limitations that we talk about and many of these strategies that the government of Iran has been limited. And many of the changes within the society has taken place thanks to the building and the establishment of these social networks that we have. And many of the programs that were basically developed in order to stop the filtering of different websites has allowed people to receive on a daily basis many of the news that they are banned from receiving. They talk about these cases, they talk about freedom of expression, and they try to bring these news to the people from Iran and outside of Iran. And many of these activities that are banned, that are not allowed to take place in Iran, thanks to this social media, people are able to know about it. And many of these groups have actually, they cannot start their activity unless they receive a permission from the government to register for their group or for their activity. The government of Iran should realize that as long as they have this terrorizing way of scaring people from having thoughts, different thoughts, they will have to stop their oppressive mean, and they will have to listen to people's will and people's wish. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Kasaizadeh.